Well, welcome everyone to another edition of My Life, My Business. Wish I was here. Shanaz is going to be taking us through another topic, uh, perhaps building on what we've done up until now, but it's all about living a life that is fully engaged so that we can enjoy this journey called life. So, Shanaz, I can't wait to hear what you've got prepared for us. So, without further ado, over to you.
Hi, thank you, Jacques, for that introduction, and good afternoon, everyone. So, I was really inspired by last week's discussion, that you had about, and I think what stuck in my head was the focus, and then also needing to kind of pause, and then the distractions that we become involved in when we are trying to achieve our goals. And I think one of the things that I mentioned was that it's really important to take a pause. And so I was thinking about that, and then I recall that one of the biggest issues that people come to me with, or in discussion even with students. So I have postgraduate students who need to complete their thesis, and some of them really struggle to complete it. It's like life happens and they are unable to complete their thesis. And for example, I even had a student who's been busy with me for 7 years, completing his PhD. He's sort of on the it has to go for editing at the moment, so he's finally done it. And it made me think about even some of my own things about when I get distracted from my goal and what I need to do. And then I had a discussion with my sister. Well, actually, they I didn't know that my sisters have a bit of a giggle when they hear me talking about going for a writing retreat, and they said, like, why would anyone go away and write? Like, it's a bit foreign to them. And one of the two who laugh, I mean, they in academia, so I had a bit of a giggle when I discovered that they actually have a laugh at me when they hear me saying I'm going away on a writing retreat. And I thought a bit about that. Then the one actually has was talking about, and she has finally gone on not a writing retreat but a think week. And for those who don't know, Bill Gates apparently goes on a think week. And the idea is that he goes into nature, he kind of disconnects himself, and he reads for a week. And apparently on one of he does this twice a year, and on one of these he's been doing it for many years. And on one of these think weeks, this is actually when he kind of um, decided on the idea of Microsoft, and it was instrumental in his success. And what it seems that what Think Weeks and my writing retreats allow for is actually the ability to focus and to put aside distractions. And so I was thinking a bit about that, and I was thinking even of my own PhD. Apparently, I finished it in record time. I finished it in 3 years, and that's a short time for a PhD. And I was trying to think about what can I apply to the other areas of my life that I've did in my PhD, and why am I getting, how can I address the distractions and then the focus. And we also heard about self-awareness. So in my area of work, and in many times when I'm engaging with people, it seems like in order to achieve one's goals, you need focus and creativity as well. And I came across one of the books that one of my texts that I use in my work with people, and it's actually called creative process in Gestalt therapy. So I just like to read something, and it's by the author is Joseph Zinker, and this is what he says about creativity. He said that creativity is the breaking of boundaries, the affirmation of life beyond life, the moving life moving beyond itself. And he also talks about creativity is an act of bravery. It states, I'm willing to risk ridicule and failure so that I may experience this day with newness and freshness. And the idea is that creativity is also about stating and believing in one sense of making anything possible. And so that kind of fits in for me. That idea of making anything possible is usually what one needs when you are having to focus and achieve a goal. And this, as I said, this year I want to try to be consistent with my goals. And I was thinking that I actually need both focus and creativity to achieve my goals. So my sister, who had a giggle about me, went away on a think week. Well, she was explaining she couldn't afford a week. She and her husband did a weekend, and they decided that they take their books. She took a business book and a financial book, and then her Bible with, and he is in the field of crime, and he took some book on South African cartels. And what then happened is that she came back and she said, "Oh my word, Shanaz, I understand why you guys go on writing retreats. I've just, kind of changed my perspective on so many things, and I gained so much focus." So there's a guy, he writes a blog, and he says the reason why we should think about doing these think weeks, and what he learned when he went away on a think week, is that he says the more time, his name's Chris Bailey, and he writes on productivity. The more time you spend keeping up, the less time you spend getting ahead. We're so focused on what we are currently working on, we can't plan ahead. And what he also learned was that we need to strike a balance between reflecting and doing. And this is what he also says: stepping back can reveal everything you've been underappreciating. He also discovered that our lives need more solitude. And an additional thing that he learned from going away on a think week was that we need think breaks more often. And the one of the biggest lessons, well, whereas I didn't necessarily go on a think week in this sense, I have gone throughout my academic career, and even when I was doing a PhD, I would go on these writing retreats or academic kind of retreats. And what that allowed me to do was to solely cut away all the office distractions and really just focus on the task that I needed to do. It also allowed me, when I'm writing an article, it allows me to be creative. And what happens on these think weeks? Apparently, Bill Gates goes away into nature, and he has meals, kind of, he orders meals, they kind of send it to him. And so what a lot of the authors around, because if you recall, last week we spoke about the importance of taking pauses. And why I want to bring this up is that my students and many of us believe that in order to focus and in order to be creative, we need large chunks of time, or we need to stay busy, and that is being creative and focusing and being productive. Whereas actually, we need to take time away often is um, is more effective than having, spending times being very busy. Very busy doesn't necessarily mean that we are able to focus or be creative. So I've came across the site that kind of helps you do these think weeks, and what they say is that in an environment free of co-workers, meetings and office distractions, the ability to focus increases exponentially. In a new environment, research has shown that studying in multiple and new locations improves performance. So it's sometimes helpful to actually go away from your environment. And so what they've generally found is that there are then also benefits even being out in nature. So it actually starts to help you. So if you are able to take, which many of my writing retreats that I've done in academia, we have it at a nice venue outdoors, sort of in nature. And what they actually talk about then is how this vitamin D and the just being in nature really just helps to de-stress, and it actually adds to one's ability to be creative. And then you can also add in exercise. And what they say then is that when employers are actually out of the usual environment, you actually remove yourself also away from the work stresses, which will help you. So how does this affect my what I learned about on my writing retreats and with my students? What I then learned was that I used to think, oh my word, I need to write in order to finish my PhD. I need to be busy writing from 8 o'clock till 9 o'clock at night without taking any breaks. And I found this, that what research has shown, and I've had to teach my students, that taking breaks is really essential for your creativity, and taking and as well as writing or being productive and being able to focus. And then it's like, but and then what they often tell me is, but how can I focus if I'm needing to take all these breaks? And the idea is that actually when you take breaks, you actually then become self-aware, and you are also then, which was part of what one needs when you are starting to kind of focus on your goals. And what you then have then is that it allows you time to reflect on what you've written or the work that you've done. And so, what I would want to encourage us is to think about stopping, or whether if you're able to take a think week or a weekend or even a day. So, one of the aspects of writing, for example, they talk about in writing in academia, and the workshop that I've done with my students, they talk about hypermania. So, hypermania is like when you've had your 6 cup of coffee and you're deciding, today I'm finishing my thesis, or today I'm finishing all this work that I have to do. But what the authors, it's another author on writing, what he says, and the biggest lesson that I learned in my thesis, and I really think that this is why I was able to finish it in such a short time and also do reasonably well on it. So he says, and his name's Boyce, the author's Boyce, and it says, timely stopping keeps us from staying with a project too long until it takes on fatigue and the excesses of hypermania, including rushed and non-reflective thinking and work that is not good enough. Timely stopping permits us to move on to other planned tasks, and so reduces feelings of busyness and overscheduling. Stopping on schedule um, compared to persisting binges. So when we are like, I need to work from 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock tonight without any stopping, what it actually does is it doesn't produce the quality of work that we are looking for. And so, what I learned during what a break does or a writing retreat does for me, it allows me to come up with ideas that are creative for my writing. It also allows me to slow down. And when I slow down, I'm able to reflect on what I've written, and is it good enough, and where I need to change. Whereas if I continue going non-stop without any pauses during without any regular breaks during the day, what I find is that the quality of work, I might as well put it aside. And this is an important lesson. So, in my writing and in the workshops that I do with my students, I call it, it's been called brief daily sessions. And that the idea is that actually you need to kind of time yourself, and think of putting, when you're trying to be creative and you're trying to focus. A good idea is to say start with 20 minutes, put on your timer on your phone or wherever, work for the 20 minutes. When the timer goes off, what you can actually then do is look at the work that you've written or produced again. And these are some of the key elements then that they call it brief daily sessions allows. And so what I discovered is that because I had this idea of brief daily sessions, combined with my writing retreats, I was actually able to complete my thesis in record time, and I was able to produce work of good quality. Whereas the idea of work is always the myth of work is that when we do work, we need large chunks of time. When actually, if you can either set aside like a weekend for a think week, or think weekend, or if you're unable to do that, to break down the work into smaller chunks and reflect on it, then you can easily address anything that you've missed. And so, what I've kind of taught my students, and what I have realized is that busyness doesn't equal creativity, and busyness doesn't equal focus, and that there is a reason why I need to break down, either able to get away for 2 days on a writing retreat, or I need to break up my time during the week into these brief daily sessions. So yeah, so I'd want to encourage people to, if you want to focus and you want to move and you want to be more productive and creative, that you consider a think weekend away from all the distractions. And if you're not able to do that, that you think of brief daily sessions where you're actually working in 20-minute slots, rather than hypermania where you're working 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock at night without any stops. So that's me.
Oh, it's very practical. Let me tell you. I like the combination of focus and creativity. Um, a client of mine likes to talk about disciplined creativity. And I guess it might allude to this focus and creativity. But, you know, you've introduced quite a few terms there, like hypermania, and then also having brief daily sessions. Like, all these things could become quite viral in its use, as terminology. So we'll give you all the recognition you require, Shanaz, as long as people who are listening to this actually make use of the very sort of practical tips you are giving. I got a few thoughts as you were talking about, and was interesting. Once again, what's lurking in the background for me is this aspect of the limiting belief. I mean, why do we believe that being productive means we got to work? The feeling of working hard means I've got to work long hours. I really got to know that I got to be kind of exhausted at the end of the day, not understanding that there's actually as the longer you work, etc., you've got what is the terminology again for this? Is that the benefits begin to recede, begin to plateau. You can make the effort as much as possible. So why? And it's a question, really, Shanaz. I mean, why do people have this belief? Is once again, and I'm interested in that because it sits at the root of why we do the things that we do with people working from on a sort of a virtual basis right now. It's a hybrid of things. So we spoke about this briefly on several different occasions already, but when you at home, that tendency to take a break, to go outside, sit in the sun, pause, do these kinds of things. And I think you've also brought this up, is why is it, and just in my experience, is that some of my clients feel this guilt. Nobody sees them, they're working at home, they need to switch that laptop on at precisely, if their working hours are 8 o'clock, and then they sit and they work throughout the day, and then if the work is still not done, probably into the night as well. But it's more often than not driven by this feelings of guilt. I need to prove that I've worked. I've sat behind my laptop. Um, and if we just broaden it out, is to say, well, actually, what you are telling us is working in these chunks of time, the brief daily sessions. I mean, the equation is you want maximum productivity. It is schedule outputs in pockets to have the focus and the creativity, and that guarantees maximum productivity. It seems like if you do anything else, it's delusional. You feel less guilty just because you're sitting behind the laptop, and 3 out of those 8 hours that you've been sitting behind the laptop is completely unproductive. Your mind is somewhere else, in any case. Or the work that you're producing is not of the quality that's demanded. So once again, there's quantity versus quality. So anyway, let me ask my question. What do you think? Why do you think we and I'm gonna say we generally have this limiting belief that and I captured as the myth of work is that we know we're working hard when it's a large chunk of time that we are affording to the activity.
I think that we what I know from my clients and those I work with, including my students and older students who work as well as study sort of part time and full time, is that they feel overwhelmed by their schedule. They feel that there is too much to do. And so that's why some of them have not been able to produce the work that they want. So I think that is that feeling of feeling overwhelmed and needing to break. And I think that you've spoken about it briefly, about needing to break up our work into chunks or even your goals. And so I've had to sit with some students and work out what is expected each month, if they want to submit their thesis in December. So I think that that's the thing. The other thing is that I think that as a society, we place emphasis on busyness, and we have maybe lost that the value of quietness and not being busy. And maybe if I can use the word mindfulness, we don't understand it. We live in a society that doesn't appreciate silence and solitude and mindfulness and being aware, because it's all about the busyness and reacting to things rather than taking the time to respond to things.
You are so right. So it's really a combination of things. As you said, feeling that too much on my plate, so therefore too little time in the day, and I just need to plug away at it. But something that you said earlier on is that that sense that you have, that you've got to work longer hours in order for you to achieve it. The counterintuitive way is to have the break, um, and I actually I like the 20-minute chunks. Is like, in my 20 minutes, here's my budget of time. I am going to do X and put it on a timer. Once the timer goes, is to stop and to reflect on, what have I just done? Have I achieved the objective, even in the 20 minutes? Okay, and then also evaluate the quality of the work. That reflection. So reflection is part of the work that needs to be carried out. Is not to push through. It's like having this moving goalpost type of thing. Okay, I've done this, done, sent. Okay, let me move on to the next thing, without pausing long enough to assess what has been done. And then also something that I love talking a lot about is celebrating the fact that you've done it quite well, but you will never have that moment of celebrating what you've achieved. And we're talking about 20 minutes. It sounds ridiculous. But if you haven't taken that moment to celebrate what you've achieved, it, you therefore do not have the fuel for the next 20 minutes. And so, therefore, you're actually doing a lot more, you're accomplishing a lot more, and the feeling that you are making progress towards the action lists that you've got, or the list of activities that you've got in the day, which then, where the creativity comes in as you do this, is finding ways of doing something uh, much more effectively in a shortest possible time, with quality of output that exceeds expectations generally. So the just that notion, um, and as you spoke about mindfulness, that notion of, let me break up. Okay, I need to do this, and yes, we've spoke about it differently, but there's this sense of an awareness in your approach. Is, first and foremost, let me deal with the guilty feeling. I will not feel guilty, because in the end, the product, the output of my work is going to be so much better. I mean, congratulations, by the way, of finishing your thesis in record time. Um, we need to pause long enough to celebrate that. Well done, Dr. Shanaz.
Thank you.
It would be remiss of me not to mention. And so we can also be inspired by that. And why is that? You took your writing, what do you call them? Your writing retreat. So whether it's a think week or writing retreat, it is a retreat. Retreat from what? I would say, just generally, retreat from the pressure of your daily life, whatever that means. And just to recap, as to, if you're working from home, is get out of the house. Make a point of getting out of the house, even if that means booking yourself into a retreat from your home. Like, when we always go into the office daily, then sometimes weekends and not wanting to leave the house is where you just do your rest and relaxation, and maybe even sitting in your garden, etc. But if you work from home, more often than not, is retreat from your home and find yourself in a different environment, so that these components of focus and creativity and productivity begin to mesh. Retreats, when you talk about, and yes, I'm prattling on here, but we've just about to run out of time if we haven't already, is that ability to stay silent, and facing the silence, not running away from that mindfulness that you're talking about. You know, becoming aware that you're a human being, that you are breathing. How are you breathing? Are you breathing nice and deeply, focusing on that? Bringing the oxygen, letting out the carbon dioxide, those kinds of things. But being okay to be with yourself. And so, I don't want to do this necessarily, but, once again, all kinds of other aspects of, do I like who I am? Do I accept who I am? Am I filling my life with so much busyness that I don't want to think? No. We are saying, look forward to the thinking time as key elements of generating the kind of productivity, innovation that is going to support you best, and also leave you with such a feeling of accomplishment. And once again, where does this all feed into? Enjoyment of everything that you do. So Shanaz, grossly over time, and I've done so, but thank you very much for this very sort of inspirational topic that you introduced and that you facilitated today. I'm inspired. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jacques. Hope that you're going to go on a think weekend or retreat sometime soon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Until next week. Bye for now.